Welcome to the Steele Creek Explorer. I'm your host, Jeremy Stout, and today we're going to take you to the Lovett property, the newest 57 acres to Steele Creek Park. Before we take you further into the Lovett property and introduce you to some of its unique and diverse natural history, first let's learn from Terry Napier, Parks and Recreation Department Director, a little bit about how this property came to be part of Steele Creek Park.
Came into possession of the property through a very gracious citizen, Mr. Lovett, that's a parcel of the family, the original family farm, and we were contacted by Mr. Lovett's representatives. He's kind of held that particular property pretty dear for many years. That's the old family homestead. One time they owned much more property, pretty much from Bristol to Blountville. And he's maintained that property most of his life, and he just felt like, he was the protector of that property. He was very particular about the timber on the property. It's one of the few properties around that area that the timber hasn't been harvested off of at some point. Some little bit of old growth remaining, so he wanted to make sure that the property continued to be cared for, and he felt like the best way to do that was to donate it to the city to become part of Steele Creek Park and part of the property that we take care of.
Well, as we've told you several times before, Steele Creek Park is special because it's one of the largest city parks in the state of Tennessee at over 2,000 acres in size. And so with the addition of this new property, it gives us not just increased acreage, it definitely does that. This new property is 57 acres added to Steele Creek's total, but it also offers us a diverse array of habitats, things that we didn't have much of prior to the acquisition of this property. So we're so thankful to have this become part of the Steele Creek Park property. So this now brings us to 2,288 acres in size, which is really something impressive for a municipal park. So let's get further into the Lovett farm and see what we can find. Well, one of the first things you find when you explore the Lovett property is that there's lots of this new growth. This was a former agricultural area, probably going back into the 1700s, but it's been allowed to just go fallow, and it's allowed trees and shrubs to grow up. So it's a great field study in what's called primary succession, the process by which a clear-cut area regrows into mature forest over a process that spans hundreds of years. So right now I'm standing in this open forest of mostly Virginia pines around me, but you can still see it's mostly open around me. We had even more open areas that I'll show you in just a second. But you don't have to take my word for it. There's an eastern towhee singing. You can hear his characteristic call, "Drink your tea." And that bird is telling us that this is the kind of habitat that they like. This is mostly open area, open forested with a little shrubby areas here and there. That's their favorite habitat. Great place for eastern towhees, great place for lots of things. Well, this is the other great thing about the Lovett property is, in addition to the primary succession it's a little bit older, it's a little bit later. We've got a young open pine forest. We also still have a few areas of younger fields that have just started to come up with goldenrods and a lot of the other plants that first come up when a field goes fallow. This is excellent for a lot of open country species. Lots of things love this tall grassy stuff and the forest edges which we have all around. So let's get out of the sun and see what we can find by pushing further into the forest. We've not even made it to the deep woods yet, and we're already finding lots of wildlife. Of course, there aren't any official trails through this property. It's brand new to Steele Creek, but we are finding game trails. That's what we're traveling on, is the trails that animals create and maintain. And right here, we're finding evidence of a critter that didn't survive its last journey on this trail. Here are some ribs. We can tell from these, this is a medium to maybe large size mammal. And here's an even better clue right here. This right here is the lower jaw or mandible of a white-tailed deer. You can tell by the teeth and the lack of teeth in the front of the jaw, or at least there would have been a few out here, not many. This is a white-tailed deer. It's not easy to say how it died, but here are the remains. All right, as we come out of the old farm fields, we start to make our way into forests that we might recognize more from other parts of the park. These are steep-sided forests that go into relatively mature oak hickory forests that you might be familiar with if you've hiked other places in Steele Creek Park. Our terrain is going to get a good deal steeper if we go any further this way, but we'll go a little bit north and see if we can find the heart of this property. I'm so excited to be here. We found the heart of this property. Mr. Lovett told us that there was a pond on this property, and satellite imagery hinted that it was probably still here, but I had no idea just how large it would be. This is a significant body of water. This is the first time I've ever seen it, and right off the bat I can tell that it is teeming with life. Frogs everywhere, white-tailed dragonflies. There's even a fish in the pond. I'm not entirely sure how the fish got here. This is absolutely magic. So glad that this now calls Steele Creek Park home. Well, we've only been here for just a few moments, and already we're finding a hotbed of biodiversity. I've heard green frogs and bullfrogs calling. I've seen dozens of frogs leaping into the water as I walk past. Dragonflies like these common whitetails abound. There's a bluegill in this pond. But as I said, this really is the heart of this forest and this whole side of Steele Creek Park, because not only the aquatic creatures, but this habitat services life all around. There are flycatchers in the trees. And of course, a water body of this size is going to attract mammals. A mountain pond tucked away in the woods where no trail goes. Folks, this is as magic as it gets. Thanks so much for coming along with me today as we explored just a small part of this new addition to Steele Creek Park. We've got a lot more to share with you about this Lovett farm, and especially the historical significance of some of what's here, but those will come in a later episode. Today we learned just how much biodiversity there is right here in this chunk of land, and how Steele Creek Park is more than just a few acres here and a few acres there. It's more than the sum of its parts, and it all works together in this web of life. So whether you're here to explore 57 acres or 2,000 acres, be sure to come to Steele Creek Park, because that's where you can be the explorer.